Hi, I'm Tom, and in this video I will show you how to create hatches in FreeCAD. I will be using a simple 2D project of a plan of a cabin, but some of the concepts may be applicable for 3D projects too. I'm using FreeCAD 1.0 release candidate in this tutorial. I created this simple floor plan in one of my previous tutorials. If you want to start without the hatches, you can download it. The download link will be in the description box below. There are three strategies of creating hatch objects in FreeCAD. The first one is hatch pattern as a property of the object. The second one is the draft hatch object. And the third one is TechDraw hatch object. Each one of these has its own advantages and disadvantages, and I will show all of them to you, including talking about those advantages and disadvantages. So let's get to it. So at first, let's start with hatch patterns as a property of an object. So I'm starting with this simple 2D drawing, which I created in the draft workbench. And to create patterns as a property of an object, we have to first have created objects which have faces. So I've got this wire created as a polyline, and it has face, this one too. So once I have object like this, I can go to the view properties of the object, and in the draft properties, I've got the option of pattern, and here if I click the drop down, I've got some default FreeCAD options of hatch patterns. These are SVG hatch patterns, so I will choose the simple one, and if I click somewhere else, you can see that I don't see anything, only that the face has disappeared. And that is because I have to adjust the pattern size. Sometimes the pattern size is too large, sometimes it's too small. So through trial and error, we can try. If I type in 0.1 and click in the space, it's still too small. So I will type 0.01, and you can see that my hatch pattern is already visible. It's still too dense for me, but here I cannot write smaller numbers like 0.005 because the precision of my project is set to 2 decimals. So this is a bit unfortunate with this type of pattern. I have to go to Edit, go to Preferences, and in General, here is number of decimals, and I will change it to 3, hit OK. And now if I deselect the object and select the object again, you can see that in the pattern size I can change the scale to 0.005, and this is the scale that I want. So I can do the same with this wall. I will choose pattern, select the simple, and select the size 0.5. The size is basically something like scale. So I've got these two. If I wanted to have also hatch pattern here on the floor, I would have to create an object with a face. So I have to create a rectangle, which with my snapping I will create it like this. I've got object with a face, and now I go to the view properties, and here on the pattern I will select the herringbone pattern, and pattern size is set to 0.03. so if I click inside, you can see that it's again, now it's too dense. So again, I will select this rectangle and change the pattern size to 0.1, and if I click in the Oops, it's I chose the wrong 0.01. Yep, that's still too much. So 0.005. Yep, the same one will fit. So this is how you create hatches as properties of a draft object. You can see the default SVG patterns here on the FreeCAD wiki pages, and you can also create your own SVG patterns, or you can also use bitmaps as a base of the hatch pattern. These SVG patterns are located on your disk in program files, FreeCAD, version number, data, mod, TechDraw, patterns, and here you can see those SVG files, so you could create your own SVG file here. Now, the advantage of creating hatch patterns this way is if you change the original objects, so I will select these and I will use the draft stretch tool to stretch this part, and I will stretch it, let's say 500 millimeters to the right. When I adjust the geometry, the pattern changes alongside the geometry. I don't have to do anything else. So this is really nice. The disadvantages of this type of patterns is that you cannot change the color of the pattern. You would have to change the original SVG, and also you cannot change the thickness of the lines. You can only change the scale. So that's the first one. That's not that big, but the main disadvantage of this type of pattern is if I move this rectangle to the, let's say level 1, to this group, if I go to my, I already created a page in a TechDraw workbench, and if I place this drawing as a draft view on a TechDraw page, you can see that I will change the scale. I will change it to 0.1. You can see already the problem. The hatch patterns, which are created as a property of the object, are not displayed on a TechDraw page. So if I export it to PDF, it would look like this, which is not really functional. So this is a big problem of creating hatches this way. This is as a FreeCAD 1.0, so hopefully in the future this functionality will be added. So to sum up, the first option, how to create hatch patterns as a property of objects, the advantages are it's an SVG pattern, so it's quite flexible and it's easy to work with, and you can also easily create your own pattern through an SVG file. It's very easy to set up, and the hatch pattern changes when the base object is changed. You don't have to do any other steps. The disadvantages are, the biggest one is that it does not work with the TechDraw workbench as a FreeCAD 1.0. That's a deal breaker for me. It requires a base object with a face to create the hatch pattern. That's not that big of a disadvantage. And the other disadvantage that you are not able to change color or thickness of the line inside of FreeCAD. You would have to change the SVG pattern. So this is hatch pattern as a property of an object. Now let's take a look at the second option, creating hatches with the draft hatch object. So now I'm back at my original floor plan without any hatch patterns, the starting file, and to use draft hatch patterns, we have to again have already created an object which has got a face created. So again, I will use this wire at first, and I select the object and then fire up the draft hatch tool, And this opens this dialog where first I will load my PAT file. What is this? You may notice from other CAD software the PAT files define the hatch patterns. These files are basically a text files if I open it, and it's a bit of a code which this one defines how the hatch pattern will look like, and you've got some default pattern styles in your program files, FreeCAD data mode, tech draw, and pad folder. Or these are quite common, it's quite easy to download them from the internet. So I will go back to my FreeCAD. So here I will load the pad file and I will change it from this one to ANSI patterns. And here there's a drop down. If there is more than one pattern defined in the file, here is the list. So I will choose the ANSI 31, and then you set scale and rotation. The important thing with scale is not to start with too little numbers, because if you start with too little numbers, FreeCAD takes very long time. If the pattern is very dense, it takes very long time to redraw it. It can take several minutes. So it's good to start with larger numbers like 10 or 100, not with 0.1 or 0.01. So we've got all this set, and now if I click OK, you can see that the hatch pattern is created and the hatch object is created here. So I can still adjust the hatch pattern, or I could change so I can change the scale to 7 or 15, and I could also change the if I double click on the hatch, I could change the pattern to ANSI 32, and which will be basically the same, and hit OK. So let me also create the same hatch from this wall. So I selected the object. I will fire up the draft hatch command. This is already preset, so I will only hit OK. And I've got this hatch created here. And if I wanted to create a hatch pattern on the floor, again, as previously, I have to create an object with a face. So first I have to create the rectangle, which will be like this. It has to have the face. And now I've got the rectangle selected, and I can create hatch pattern. And let's say I will do the ANSI 31, or let's say ANSI 37. And let me change the rotation so it will be, let's make it like something like floor tiles. So now I've got my hatch created, but the base object is still visible underneath there, the face. So I have to, or I should, turn off the face to false. To create the hatch, the object has to have the face turned on. That's a bit of a disadvantage, but after it's created, I can select the objects and make face turn to false, so only the hatches are visible, not the faces, as in proper draft drawing. Now the big advantage of draft hatch compared to the previous one that we were creating is it works with the tech draw workbench. So I've got my page here again. I will select level 1, go to tech draw workbench, create a tech draw draft view, and go to the page and change the scale to 1 to 10, move it a little bit, and it's not the hatches are not visible there because they are not in the level 1 group. So I will move them there in the level 1 group, and I will move them into the hatch group. So once I move them there, the hatches are visible inside of the tech draw page, and I could print it or I could export it to PDF without any problem. So this is a great advantage of the of the draft hatch. Now let's unfortunately take a look at some disadvantage of the draft hatch elements. First, I've got these hatches created, and you could see that if I select this one, I previously changed the scale and rotation, and the hatch was updated automatically. But now I change it, nothing happens. This is because if I edit the hatch, I have to have the original underlaying face turned on. So if I'm changing these objects, these properties of the hatch, I have to have the rectangle selected, select make face to true, and once I selected it to true, it's updated. Now I can turn it to false again, so it's not visible. So now the draft hatch is changed. So this is a bit tedious that you have to turn on the face and then turn it off after you have changed the hatch. Now the same applies if I change the underlying objects. So I will change the geometry. I will stretch this plan by 500 millimeters. The hatches don't change according to the underlying geometry. Only after I again turn the face to true and click here, they are updated. So again, if I turn the face to true, they are updated. So to actually fix this behavior, we can set the underlying geometry in the view properties, and object style, there's the shape appearance. If we go to the shape appearance and the transparency of the shape, and we set it to 100, the face is 100% transparent, so it's not visible, but it's still there. So now if I change the hatch, I go to data, back to 50 and 45. So this way I'm able to go around the thing that I have to turn the face on or off. So I will select all of these and go to the view properties, shape appearance, set transparency to 100. And now the hatches behave the way that I would expect them to. So if I stretch the plan back to the original size, so make it 500 millimeters like this, they stretch based on how the underlying object is stretched, and of course the faces are not visible. So this is a bit of a workaround, but it works. Another unfortunate property of the draft hatch, or especially of the pattern, is that it does not support dashed lines. So you might have seen that with this hatch, I'm using the ANSI 33 pattern, which, if I take a look at a DWG editor, it should look like this. It should be one line that's solid and one line that's dashed. But in FreeCAD for for draft hatch, this dashed line is changed to a solid line. So this is quite a bit of limitation of this type of hatch. Hopefully again in the future it will be changed, but as of FreeCAD 1.0, it does not support dashed lines. On the other hand, the advantage of these hatches is that you can easily change their appearance inside of FreeCAD. So let's say I wanted to have these with line width that's not so thick, so I will change the line width to 1. And I can also change, if it's still too visible for me, I can change the line color to something that's light gray, like this. Or I had the wrong one selected, so I can select these, and let's say I want to have the color to be, for them to be red, like this. And this hedge, I want to change the color to light gray, so you can see that that I can easily change the appearance of the hedges. So this is another advantage of this type of hedge. There's one more important thing to note about the draft hedge, and that's the orientation of the draft hedge. Let's see, I will show you an example. I will use the wire tool, and the first one I will draw in the counterclockwise direction, like this. And the important thing is how I draw the first segment. And then I will draw another face, and I will draw it clockwise. So the first segment here was from right to left, this one from left to right. And now I will create the draft hedge here with this face, so it looks like this. And then I will choose this one and create the same settings. And if I hit OK, you can see that the orientation of the hedge is different with each of these faces. This is because the orientation is taken from the first line that is being created. So also, if I created the line, that would be a line like this, not horizontal. So the first line was this one of the face, and now I created the hedge again. It's also, the hedge is rotated because it's also always relative to the first line of the face. But this, I think in most cases, or in some cases, this is undesirable. I want to have all of these three faces hedged with the same type of hedge and same orientation. How can I achieve that? I achieve that by selecting the hedge object, and in the data properties, there's the property translate, and by default it's set to true. If I change it to false, here with this hedge, it does not change anything because the orientation is the right one. But if I choose this second one and change the translate to false and click in the space, you can see that now the hedge is oriented independent of the first line of the face, but it's oriented to the global coordinate system. So also with this one, the third one, if I set the translate to false, the orientation of the hedge will be like this, which I think is a more desirable result than the previous one. So this is the second option, how to create hedges, the draft hedge tool. Now let's take a look at advantages. The advantages, it uses .pat patterns, which there are a lot of resources on the web. And the most important thing is it works with TechDraw Workbench. The disadvantages are it does not support dashed line. That's quite a big one, but we have to live with that as a FreeCAD 1.0. It also requires base object with a face, so first you have to create the base object and then only then you can create the hedge, and is not as easy to set up, and it needs a bit of attention during edits. And the path format might prove not as easy for beginners to create your own patterns, but it's quite powerful. So yeah, this one is arguable. Now, let's take a look at the third option, how to create the hatches, and that is using TechDraw hatch object. I'm again starting with my original file with the floor plan without hatches, and here I will be not creating the hatches inside of the 3D view, but I will create them on the page. So I will go to my TechDraw workbench, and I've got this page already created, but I will choose the level 1, and this time I won't use the TechDraw draft view, but I will use the TechDraw view with all of these objects. So I will create TechDraw view. Now this is not a tutorial on TechDraw view, so just follow with me. I have to set up the orientation, so I do that with these arrows. So I will do the setup like this, and also I will change the scale to 1 to 10 directly and hit OK. So now I created the TechDraw view, and don't be worried about these dots, they are not printed. If I take a look at how it will be printed, it's of course printed without the dots, but I will turn the frame on so I can work with it easily. And now to create the TechDraw hatch, I've got these two options, TechDraw hatch or TechDraw geometric hatch. They are basically the same command, they differ only that TechDraw hatch uses SVG patterns or bitmaps, and TechDraw geometric hatch uses .pat patterns. So we know both of them. I will be using SVG just for now because it's a bit quicker. So to create these hatches, I first have to select a face in my view. If you can see that if I hover my mouse here over these places, I can see that it always selects a closed area. So if I select this one, I've got this face or closed area selected. Now I start the TechDraw hatch command, and I've got this dialog where again I can select pattern file, and basically these are the patterns in your patterns folder on your FreeCAD installations. So I will choose the simple SVG, and you can already see the preview. So I want to make it the scale a bit larger, and yeah, let's make it 4. Yep, so let's do it like this and hit OK, and that's it. The hatch pattern is created. So this is quite easy. I select the closed area, select the tool, select the scale, and yep, hit OK, and the hatch pattern is created. You can see sometimes there's a little bit of a bug that sometimes it's created in the project tree, whereas it should be created under the view. But once you save the file and open it again, all of these hatches will be under the TechDraw view. The advantage of these TechDraw hatches is that I don't have to create the underlying object with a face. If I wanted to create the pattern of the floor, I can select this closed area. I hold Control, select this one, and I can hold Control and also select this one. Now I fire up the TechDraw hatch tool, and I will change a different pattern. I will use the herringbone again, and I'll change the scale to 10. That's too big, so to 5, and let me see that let me say that it's okay. Now if I wanted to make this floor pattern less prominent, I will select it, and in the view properties I can change the hatch color. So I will change it to a gray one, so it's not that visible. So this is nice. You can quite easily change colors. So maybe these two patterns should be red, I could change the color to red easily. Now we have created these hatch patterns, but they exist only on the page. If I take a look at my 3D view, the hatches don't exist here. So if I created another page with this plan view, let's say in different scale, I would have to create a new set of hatches. And let's also take a look at how they would behave if we change the elements, because again you could see that if I stretch this part, and again I would stretch it by 0.5 meter, and I go back to the page, the hatches change, but sometimes it makes a bit of a mess and they float into another area. So this is really not a foolproof way of doing hatches with regards to changes. Sometimes the changes may work, but sometimes they overflow like this and make a mess of the hatching, and you have to create hatches from scratch. What is, I think, the biggest disadvantage of this way of using hatches is that you have to use the TechDraw view, not the TechDraw draft view. And the TechDraw view has some problems, like it does not support dashed lines. So here I've got dashed lines, they are not here. So your mileage may vary with this type of hatch pattern. It might prove problematic just because you are using the TechDraw view. So this is the third option, creating TechDraw hatch object. Let's take a look at advantages. The first one, that you can easily use both pattern and SVG patterns. There's no need to create the base object with the face. This is big advantage. It's easy to set up and work with. Changes when base object is changed, they sometimes work, sometimes they don't. I put it here into advantages, but you saw in my example that you cannot really rely on that. The disadvantage is, the biggest one, as it is not supported by the TechDraw draft view, so you will have some problems with the TechDraw ordinary view. And another disadvantage, which may sometimes be advantage, is that the hedge is placed only on the one page or view. So if you want to have the hedge on multiple pages, you have to create it multiple times. And again, I think it has a bit of a more bugs than the draft hedge as of FreeCAD version 1.0. Sometimes when you rotate the hedge pattern, it doesn't really work as expected. So these are the three options how to create hatches in FreeCAD. And I'm not talking about the 3D hatches, which are automatically created when you cut a 3D object. These are 2D hatches, but they can also work with 3D drawing. So the first one is hatch pattern as a property of an object. The second one is draft hatch tool. The third one is TechDraw hatch tool. Which one you will use depends on your usage. For me, I think the most useful is the draft hatch object because it's the most flexible one, but the big problem is that it does not support dashed lines. If you like using FreeCAD, consider supporting the project by donating to it. The donate page will be in the description box below. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.